Hello, and welcome to the Cycle Endometriosis podcast, where we will delve deep into experiences, challenges, and triumphs of those navigating a life with endometriosis. Join us as we share the stories of resilience, offer insights from experts, and foster a community of support for those affected by this often misunderstood condition. Whether you're newly diagnosed, a seasoned warrior, or seeking understanding, I hope this podcast is here to help empower you and uplift you on your journey. Tune in as we break the silence, shatter stigmas, and amplify the voices of the endometriosis community. Medical disclaimer: this podcast is not intended for the purpose of providing medical advice. All information, content, and material of this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, and/or medical treatment of a qualified physician or healthcare provider. Thank you so much for being here, and now on to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of the Cycle Podcast. I have a very special guest today. As always, I have so many special, wonderful guests. Whitney, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much. I'm doing really well and looking forward to chatting with you today. Thank you again for the invite.
Yes, and thank you for joining us all the way from Berlin, Germany today. Appreciate that. Look forward to getting to know you a little bit more and chatting about just your story and journey with this disease. But first, before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you have a Chihuahua, so tell me a little bit about what's going on with you, how you're doing, and a little more about you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. I am, like I say, currently living in Berlin, Germany. I'm originally from Tennessee, from the US. I don't have a twang, only after a little bit of whiskey now and then. I have been living here for some years, but I'm currently doing my PhD in Islamic Studies and Christian Muslim Relations at the University of Edinburgh. So I'm between Berlin and Edinburgh. And I'm also doing a lot of work in international development and interfaith relations, so consulting in this area as well. And these are my very big passions, I would say. And living here with my little fur baby, as you mentioned, my little Chihuahua Daisy, and just trying to finish this PhD and then hopefully moving on after that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. Do you think you'll stay across the pond when you're done with your PhD, or will you come back to the States, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I've been abroad. It will be my 14th year this year, actually.
Wow.
So the goal is to potentially get back for some time. I'm really doing a lot of international work in the aims that I can go back to the States, maybe to Washington or New York, and hold a big director position or maybe work within the government. I just think it's so important to have an international perspective and to be able to bring it back home. So my main focus is on gender and women's empowerment. That's at everything I do, and especially Christian Muslim relations, as I mentioned. So I'm hoping to be able to work at home at some point in time. It also depends on the elections this year.
Yeah.
And also, I did my master's degree in Egypt, and I've also worked in Turkey before, so I'll talk about that later on. But I really love the MENA region, and it's kind of difficult at the moment. I don't think it would be very good to live there at this current space and time, but Cairo and Istanbul both hold really dear places in my heart. So we'll see. Maybe I could end up there as well. But I have permanent residency here in Germany, which I'm very thankful for. I obtained that in 2018 in the midst of all this endo mess, which we'll speak about. But I am really thankful to be able to be here. And I get home as much as I can, maybe once every year and a half, which isn't very often. But I really miss the States and my family there. And my mom and my sister have been really supportive of me and during this time. So I miss them a lot. I hope I'll go home maybe in the summer this year, but Tennessee is so hot in the summer.
Yes,
It
and
is.
humid.
Oh my God. It is my least favorite time of year, to be honest. I do miss the big hair though for the
My hair is big right now, and it is not even humid. Well, it's snowing here. I was telling Whitney earlier, it is snowing like crazy. And we're recording this in March, and it is snowing end of March. It's snowing
yeah.
like crazy, which is abnormal.
Well, you would love that Tennessee humidity in the summer.
Oh my goodness. Well, so yeah, you've been abroad for quite some time. Um, so I'm curious, just as I'm sure we're going to get into just the different types of care too, being abroad and having endometriosis. So, really, I always love to start from like the beginning of it, when maybe you knew something was off or you started to feel off. And just we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and I guess at the age of maybe 14 or 15, I started having a lot of issues in my abdomen area. And I've always had chronic illnesses and was really sick as a child too, with asthma and fibromyalgia. And so it was always hard to tell like what was actually happening to me. But I think around the age of 15, I really started feeling like weird things in my abdomen. And I didn't start my period until I was like 18, I think. And I actually had to have shots for them to make my period come. And I think that was the time when I really realized, okay, something is wrong. And I didn't know the word endometriosis until actually much later in life, even though my mom had it and my aunt had it. And I think growing up, so I'm from a really rural part of East Tennessee. I grew up in the mountains. It took us like an hour to get to the grocery store. It's still like that, by the way. And I just think I grew up in a society where, mothers and grandmothers didn't talk about these ailments. Like you just kind of hold it in and you are like, oh, I feel sick today. And you don't say why. I mean, men are always around. So I was so shocked when I found out this word. And I remember telling my mom about it. And she's like, oh, yeah, I had that. Like I had surgeries for that. And I was like, what? Um, yeah, so it was a very strange process for me learning about that. I don't even know how old I was when I found this word, I can't
Yeah.
remember.
And so when you were like younger, middle school, high school, you said you knew you had like fibromyalgia and you had some other
Yeah.
things going on. And so during those times, did you just like not feel like middle school, high school, do you just remember not feeling well often? Or do you feel like, no, I was okay, but
Yeah, I think this was another kind of weird thing, and I'm still like this now. Like, I have a very extroverted, bubbly personality, and I can make friends with a rock. Like, I think that is the best gift that I've ever been given by the universe is that I can just literally make friends with anyone. And people tell me things, when I'm on a plane or anywhere. And I think I just kind of did what my ancestors did or my mother did, just suffered through. And I'm like, oh, I don't feel good. Or, I wasn't a very good test taker. And sometimes I wasn't very, like that wasn't the best in school, but I was always very smart and I really tried and had good relationships with my teachers and my friends in school. But yeah, I didn't feel great all the time. And I remember like not being able to sleep a lot and things like that. And I never wanted to really talk to my friends about these things because like they were all having their periods and I wasn't. And the thing of like, oh, how can you have abdomen pain if you're not having a period? You don't know what it's like. So just ingesting that as a young woman and not having the words to explain this experience, I think was really hard. So I didn't talk about it very much and also didn't talk to my family about it either. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's common for our generation. I think for the younger generation, it might be a little bit different, but yeah, there was so much shame around it almost and
Yeah.
embarrassment. And you didn't want to
Yeah.
talk about anything really that was related to health, regardless of cycles or periods or anything. I remember being very similar and just being
Mm,
like, just deal with it. I remember
right.
feeling that way. So
Exactly.
so you had to have some things done to actually bring your cycle on, and you said that was
Mm,
at 18. What kind of
mm.
happened after that, or how were you feeling after that?
Yeah, so afterwards, my periods have never ever been regular. Actually, just a few weeks ago, I had my first 28-day period at the age of 35. I'll be 36 in May. And I was like, what is this? I don't like this. Why is this happening? Yeah, so they've always been really irregular and they've just been horrible. I mean, horrible, horrible things to deal with. And I was on birth control since the age of 18. I mean, so many different types of birth control to help like monitor the period or to make it regular, but that never happened. So I think I just kind of tried to be as busy as possible. In undergrad, I went to the University of Tennessee and I was the president of everything and, engaged in all the clubs and tried to, just have a lot of fun. And I actually realized I didn't have like a core like partner at that time. I like dated a lot and went out a lot and had a lot of fun, but I just didn't feel also like really great about the way that my body felt. I think I looked really nice, but I didn't feel that I could be intimate with someone in that way because it was very painful. And also at this time, didn't have the words to ever share, even with my best friends, about that again, because there was these taboos of, your sexual freedom anyway, and like agency. And I mean, I think some of my friends speculated, or if I had a bad period, they would bring me food and say like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for that." And they were always very comforting to me, but just couldn't understand more than it being a bad period, which many of them dealt with anyway. So again, not
Yeah.
having the language was really difficult.
Yeah, because it's so normalized that that is just normal, that
Yeah,
you're in pain and you just lay in bed the first couple days, and it's not normal. It's
no,
totally not normal.
yeah,
So as college goes on, it sounds like you were very busy and doing all of the things and having fun too, which is great.
yeah.
Um, very important. What happened after that? When did you start to get on this endo path?
Yeah, so I I graduated in December 2010, and I had applied to go to school, a couple of excellent schools in the United States. And I also applied to go to the American University in Cairo to study, international affairs and global relations. And I wanted to focus on the Middle East specifically because of my passion for interfaith work. And I remember getting accepted to the school, and I was just so excited because I had the opportunity to go there the year before. I spent a summer working at, thanks to my mentor, my academic mother, Dr. Rosalind Hackett. I had spent some time in Uganda working at an interfaith entity there, the Acholi Religious Leaders Peace Initiative. They helped combat Joseph Kony and the Lord's Resistance Army. So this was in northern Uganda, and it had gone to Egypt after that. And I remember falling in love with Egypt and everyone I met there, and I just had to go. So when I got offered this position, this place, I said yes. And then the Arab Spring happened, of course, and I remember thinking I need to get out of America because my family will lock me in a basement somewhere and they're not going to let me
Let me
go.
go.
So I still went to Egypt, and I actually was there through all of the regime changes from Mubarak to Morsi to Sisi and the coup attempts in between. I was there through everything. So it was incredible to be there during this period in history. But that was at the time when things started getting really bad health wise. I was living such an amazing life, getting to experience so much. I mean, just incredible. And there were these moments. I remember being in a taxi and I was going to meet some friends, and I just felt something burst inside of my abdomen, and I had to rush to the hospital. And that was the first time I had an ovarian cyst that needed to be removed. I've had two surgeries for that in my life. And I was like, okay, what is going on? And I remember trying to seek help there. And that was the first time actually in Egypt when someone had told me about endometriosis treatment and were asking about it. And it was a really hard time because when I was seeking therapy or assistance there, they would always say, like, where's your husband? Where's your boyfriend? Why are you here
Right.
alone? And I know it's this sometimes the same in the States. I've been in the US and a doctor's waiting for a man to walk in because they can't look at me. They want to hear the guy's response. And I'm like, but it's my body.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
does this matter?
And how scary to be alone outside, like your family wasn't with you, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
how scary was that for you? And to be just in a totally, like you said, in another country where
Yeah,
they're waiting for the male figure to come in. I'm sure
exactly.
I know you're very passionate about, advocacy and women's health and things like that. I'm sure part of that is played into this because of those
Oh,
experiences.
1,000%, 1,000%. I even remember at one point, I was trying to I was near the time I needed to submit my master's thesis, and I had two amazing supervisors, and then a third supervisor had come on board to kind of help wrap things up. And she's like an external supervisor. And I remember that something had happened. My legs had been burned because of a glass pot, like it was this weird freak accident, and I had to go get treated at this military hospital for the burns on my legs. And also, while I was there, I had sought treatment for some pain and tried to get pain medicine related to the endometriosis. And I had sent this photo of my legs, like, being covered. And my two supervisors both knew that I had these health problems. And I had copied in like a male professor who was kind of like the director who was supposed to be viewing this end of year master's thesis that I was submitting, because I wanted to be transparent and to say,
Yeah.
this is happening to me. Like, this is very scary. I have no idea what to do. Like, I cannot possibly think about coming in to submit this thesis right now. And the woman, this external supervisor, wrote this scathing email and was like, how dare you include Dr. So and so? He is a respectable Muslim man. How can you think to send this photo of your legs? Like, how can you mention this issue? I was just like, oh my gosh. I was so devastated after that. And I just was like, what is even the point? I mean, but I did submit my thesis and I had great support from my other two supervisors. But in that moment, I felt so ashamed and I was like, did I do
Course.
something wrong? Like, I was just trying to be transparent. It wasn't like I was sending a photo of me in my underwear
Right.
with my legs
Right.
wrapped up, and I had attached all these medical documents. And I found it very strange too, because at the same time there were images of women in Egypt, like in Tahrir Square, who were being beaten by the military police, and they were having their clothes ripped off. And I remember there's this one photo, it's still burned in my mind, of this woman wearing a blue bra, and the police were just like beating her. And I was like, if you can see images like this and you're against that, why can't you also be against really bad healthcare that women are supposed to deal with? Like, why can't you support women's reproductive health? So I just really was disgusted by that, and
I'm
how
sure.
this woman played such a role in this as well. And that was the
Oh,
first time I was really, really slapped in the face of like, what am I supposed to do? I guess I just keep this inside and not say anything.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And you're talking about, this is like 2010, 11, 12, like
Yeah.
this isn't, 1950 when
Yeah,
this was
exactly.
happening, right? So things start to get harder and more challenging for you while you're there in Egypt, and they mention endometriosis. What happened after that? After this cyst had ruptured, what steps and things started to happen after that?
Yeah, so I think that's the first time I had a real conversation with my mom about what what it meant having endometriosis, what happened to her. And I started looking up things to do for myself because, again, a treatment wasn't readily available in Cairo at that time. At least I didn't feel comfortable even seeking out the treatment at that point. I was just like, I'm not going to do anything. And so I started trying holistic medicines. And thankfully, there in Cairo, you can get so many types of holistic medications, and also going to get certain types of like massages and things like that. And I really started taking care of my health. I always have been a pretty healthy eater, but at that point, I really tried to be as healthy as possible and just really started changing my lifestyle, doing more yoga. I tried to journal a lot about the things that I was feeling and started reading as much as I could. And in 2016, that's actually when I moved to Istanbul. And I was working there for a year at a law firm, actually, that was focusing on arbitration law. And that was very interesting for me to apply my skill set there. But in Istanbul, I also had some instances where I had to go to the hospital because I thought, what is happening? Like the bleeding became so intense, and a lot of the times they thought I was having a miscarriage. They would always ask that. And then again, who do we call? What do we do? And I still didn't get the help that I needed in Istanbul, sadly. And I think it wasn't until I came to Germany, and I was between Germany and Istanbul, but I decided to move here fully in December 2017. And I had to have a second cyst surgery then. And during that cyst surgery, they actually finally diagnosed me with endometriosis as well. And I felt just so validated during that time. And I have been seeing so many gynecologists and so many specialists. And I'm like, my mom has this, my family has this. And it was after that surgery, just having this one piece of paper in Germany, they were like, okay, this is legitimate. Now we can help you. You're not just some crazy woman who's making up all these things. And I actually have that like paper, this like cyst surgery where you could see everything. I have it like in a small picture frame in my room because sometimes I just feel that I need to feel that validation, and I can look at it and I'm like, okay.
Right.
You deserve to take a moment and be angry or to feel sad or something like that.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that like validation and that you framed it, because I was having a conversation with someone who has a different chronic illness, even yesterday. And I said, there's a part of us that wants to just, at least for me and this individual that I was talking to, that you almost want to sometimes just forget that you have this, and like you want to like have this normal life. But then there's this other part of you that like, I think almost has to like grieve that normalcy that sometimes we can't have because we have this illness. And I find that to be so challenging as someone who's also like just a type A person, that I want to achieve all these things and do all of these things. But sometimes my body says, no, nope, you're not doing that. And I have to rest. And I find that that's been kind of like a big life lesson for me over the years, over and over again, is sometimes I just have to say, no, I can't do that. Or I can't go out with my girlfriends when they drink a bottle of wine. I can't participate in that with them because the next day my inflammation would be so high. It just wouldn't be worth it to do that, even though I really want to sometimes participate in those things. So there's almost like this like grief that we have to deal with of that like old life, I guess I would say that, or maybe it's not even old life because we've had this disease all along, but the things that maybe we can't do anymore that we wish we could or other people can do. So I think having something like you said next to your bed like that it's a good reminder to give yourself grace, is what I think, because I find it to be challenging to do that sometimes, but we all need to give ourselves grace. And it's very hard when people aren't listening to you, or you're not believed, or they're looking for a man to talk to instead of you. It's very challenging. And I think that was just a really good tip. So I had tangent on that for a second, but Whitney,
Mm.
also, were you having other symptoms outside of your cycle? Did you start to feel sick kind of every day? Like what else was like transpiring as you were getting this like diagnosis?
Yeah, so the symptoms became really, really bad actually, I think around the time of that cyst surgery. So I actually got married in 2015 to my ex who was German. We just got divorced. Our divorce was final in January of this year, which I'm very happy about. But during that time in 2017, things got really bad health wise and also relationship wise. I think what you were describing about like giving yourself grace and realizing that you have to change some things in your life. Absolutely. I mean, I could not agree more with that. I It got to the point where I was just a zombie, absolute zombie, and I realized it was also because I had thyroid issues, which is often connected to endometriosis. I have Hashimoto's disease, and they also found that out through testing before I had my first endo surgery, which was in 2019. Um, and yeah, so I had so much pain. I mean, I have fibromyalgia, which is connected to pain, but it's very different. Like, endo pain is something else entirely. This like back pain, the leg pain, like sometimes not being able to walk, the like shooting of like fire throughout your abdomen, the neck pain, the shoulder pain, just everything that was happening and still sometimes does on a consistent basis. And with my ex, we had gotten married, we wanted to live this life together. He knew me as this super adventurous woman who, if someone says, no, you can't do something, I'm like, watch me do it backwards, upside down, like traveling and just like living this wild life. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't go out as much. I couldn't drink. If I did drink, I would get very upset and emotional. I couldn't be intimate in the ways that I wanted. And there was a lot of resentment. And I think that's something that we don't get to talk about a lot with endo, is how it affects your relationships intimately and also with your friendships. I mean, there's a lot of anger from my ex and misunderstanding. I mean, I didn't even have the language to describe how I was feeling because I couldn't have those conversations with anyone around me. I didn't know anyone else who had endometriosis, and just my mom. And I don't want to
Right,
talk with her about this
right.
intimate stuff. So I think that really damaged our relationship a lot. And it wasn't meant to be in the end, but now I have a partner who's very caring and understanding, and it makes such a difference. But there's still times when I speak with him or some of my friends who've known me for a decade now, and I say something like when we go out, and they're like, oh, why is that? I'm like, I've literally told you this so many times, or there's so many books. Are you not reading? Are you not listening? And I also feel like extending grace to them is important, and I'm trying to do that. But sometimes it's just like, how many times, or how like what can I say or do? Like I don't want to like drag myself out, like literally on my hands and knees. And I just hope that, I feel like at this point in our life, it's sometimes difficult to say, like, I can't. And then, and you like gaslight yourself. Are they going to understand? Are they thinking I'm a bad friend? Because friendships are just very important to me right now, and chosen family. And I think that's the thing that I'm having the toughest time with, along with the grieving, as you mentioned. So I'm working through that, but it's still difficult.
I really appreciate you opening up and talking about that. I think a lot of people who listen to the show will understand and resonate and feel the exact same way, have gone through very similar things. And it is very challenging, I think, with friendships. I've had some very, very best friends say things like, you're always sick, or why can't you go out?
Yeah.
And I hate to cancel on people. And I agree with you. I've gaslit myself of, maybe you don't feel sick. Maybe you just don't want to go out. But I know I want to sometimes go out and do the fun things. And I know I can't. Like there's just sometimes I just can't do it. And it's challenging, and it goes back to, and people have heard me say this on the show a lot, it's because there's the awareness of this disease. If you had
Exactly.
diabetes and you were going out to dinner and you said to your friends, I have to eat right now because I know my blood sugar is going to drop, there would be more understanding because it's just more well known.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
people who are listening, one of the things that actually really worked with a couple of my very good friends was they did watch the documentary Endo What? And now there's another documentary, Below the Belt, or if there's any other, this is Endometriosis. I haven't seen it yet, that just came out in the UK. So I just asked my friends to attend an event with me and watch these films. And I will say, one of my very good friends came up after and was crying and apologized to me
Mm.
for not understanding. And so sometimes it's easier to hear it from someone else, or even listening, not that I'm trying to plug this podcast, any podcast about the disease. If they're a really good friend, I think that they would be open to listening to it from someone else. And then I sometimes think they have more understanding, even partners or parents or siblings that don't understand it. Sometimes hearing it from someone else helps them understand differently. So that's a tip of advice that's helped me a little bit with those relationships, but it's still very challenging. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, Whitney. Okay, so in 2019, sounds like, well, you had this second cyst surgery. What happened after that?
Yeah, so and thank you for that tip as well. I just wanted to say I think they're going to do a below the belt showing in Berlin soon. So I'm hoping to
Good.
take my friends there. So I will keep you posted on how that goes. But I agree with you 1,000%, and thank you for bringing that up. So I'm hoping they join me in seeing that. But yeah, in 2019, I had my first endo surgery at the MIC clinic here in Berlin. And at the time, I also got a really great job with a ministry position in Berlin. So I was really proud of myself for that and was working like crazy. And then this surgery happened, and I was my ex and I had actually split up during that time. And within 1 year, I had to move to 3 different apartments. He was still living in our old apartment. And that was really hard on my body. And I remember having that surgery and thinking, everything is going to be fantastic. This is going to be great. I'm going to be healthy. And I got this 1 page document that explains what happened, and then another page that showed the endo and actually seeing it, stage 4 endometriosis. I was like, wow, this looks crazy. Like, is that actually in my body? How? I mean, and I remember showing my friends and even posting online about it, and people were like, oh my God, this just looks like Spider-Man went nuts in your uterus. And I think that was really the first time when people started reaching out to me. And I started posting so much on Instagram at the time, and actually had a lot of people coming and having general conversations with me. And I really kind of was embarrassed to talk about that, but I also was like very therapeutic for me. And everything was all right for a couple months. And then I had gone back to my gynecologist in December, and I was very surprised because she said, "Oh my gosh, Whitney, we just found like stage 0/1 cancer in your uterus." And I was like, "What? How is this possible? I just had this surgery in in June." And and I actually had been planning to go and see my father, who was very, very sick in Tennessee at the time, and we hadn't talked for years. And he was not in good health. And my gynecologist said, you have to have this surgery within 2 weeks, or like it's just going to spread all over your uterus. So I had that surgery, and she removed a carcinoma the size of an avocado seed, which was wild. And I still flew to Tennessee to see my father, even though I was not technically supposed to. And hopefully she doesn't hear this. but but yeah, and I got to Tennessee, and during the trip, my this I guess the wound had kind of busted open. So I actually had to go to the hospital there and get things patched up. It was not a good time for me. And I was in so much pain and just, ugh, it was just really horrible, to be honest. And my ex at the time was like, oh, I'm sorry, but I'm glad you're doing well. I mean, I knew at that time, I was like, okay, we're definitely not going to heal this relationship. I was like, this is
Yes, this is
not
over.
this is
Yeah.
definitely over. But at that point, it was just really, really hard for me. And I think people began to see, like, how can you work and have this happen. And it was just like for several months just constant pain. And that was really, really hard to deal with. And I wasn't sure, how to proceed after that. I just felt like really unwhole at the time after having the surgery, and my ex and I had split up. But I got really great news. A few weeks later, I got my PhD offer, and that was incredible. I was like, finally, universe, some good news. It was
I have
amazing.
chills. Yeah, I have chills just hearing that. I'm so sorry that all of that happened at one time. I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's all right. I was really lucky to have her. And also, I think I mean, I'm very grateful to be in Germany because, we have universal healthcare here. And I estimated that the cost of all the surgeries and procedures I've had in relation to my reproductive health would be well over like 500,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, it makes me really sad that so many women in the States, I mean, my story is not uncommon. And so many people at home just I don't know how people pay for it, honestly. So I'm really thankful that I have access to all of this here. And this is another reason why I'm kind of hesitant to go back to the States for as long as I have a uterus, because what if that happens again? That's it's a privilege to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's such a lack of access to care for people with this disease in a lot of countries, but
Yeah.
definitely here in the US. And, I've talked to people in the UK, the waiting time, and Canada, the waiting time is so long too,
Yeah.
that people are really struggling and they're on waiting lists for years, multiple years at a time. And
Yeah.
it's very challenging.
This waiting list part, I think, was I think also really, really bad here in Germany. And I actually found out after this cancer was removed that I also had adenomyosis.
Mhm.
So I found out that in Germany they do these procedures that are not very common in Europe, and I had applied to get surgery for adenomyosis because after I had that endo surgery in 2019, I think it was in 2020, like probably the end of 2020, when the pain came back, and it was even worse, way worse than anything that I had experienced before. And I was just like, oh my God, it either is the endo or the adeno. So I had gone to see an adenomyosis specialist here in Berlin. And, they decided that I should have a procedure there. So I had waited for more than a year for this surgery, which happened in November 2021. And between that, I actually had to have surgery for endometrial hernias that they found during my first endometriosis procedure. So I also had that in the time that I was waiting because they couldn't do it during the endo surgery. And when I had this adenomyosis surgery, that was the worst experience probably of my entire life. I This was during COVID, and I am like most women who have endo or adeno, like we have a really high pain tolerance. And I think it takes much more medication for us to feel anything. Not that, people are like, oh, it's like you're drug addicts almost and we need this medicine to function. And I'm like, yeah, but this is not a good way to compare us to that. Like we need this to be able to do anything. And I specified to my surgeon that I had to have I needed to be put under, I needed to have narcosis because I just knew that if they were to give me some kind of simple pain medicine, it wouldn't be enough. And I remember going in the day of the surgery and I was just really hopeful that I had waited, and he had such a good, you know, this um, a reputation. And I was on the table waiting for the nurses to, go through and put me under, and he came in and he said, "I'm really sorry, but we don't have an anesthesiologist here today who can give you the narcosis. So we're going to have to do it where you're partially awake. But most of the women here are fine with that." So most of the women go there and they give the same surgery to women who have myomas. And these are older women who have maybe one myoma in their whole life, or younger women, maybe one myoma. They are not people who have endometriosis and who have to deal with severe pain every day. So during that surgery, I was awake for more than 1 hour, feeling absolutely everything on the table, bawling my eyes out. And I remember he spoke wonderful English. He reminded me of this, like, I don't know, one of these characters from Shrek. This, like, the blonde prince for some reason. He looked like that and he talked like that. He had this really great, like, British accent. And he was like, "I'm so sorry." He was, wiping my face. He's like, "I don't know why you're not asleep." And I wanted to be like, "You insane person. It is because of the reasons I told you." And I just remember feeling everything and looking at the clock on the table. I was just torture. It was literally torture. And I finally fell asleep, like when they were wheeling me into the recovery room, and I was so sick. And I remember that I was asleep for so long. They were like, "We've been trying to wake you up." And I was like, "Yeah, because I probably just finally got to go to sleep. The medicine kicked in."
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what he told me. He came there. I have no idea what he said because I was under the medicine that I was supposed to have been under.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
It was the worst experience, and they actually had put me in a hospital ward. It wasn't the gynecological ward because that one was full. It was a mixed ward during the pandemic, and there was, like, I don't know, 100 patients and maybe like 3 nurses, because everyone was in there for COVID, and nobody knew what endometriosis was, or adenomyosis. No one knew what surgery I had. They came in and were looking all over my body. He actually went in through my arm to do the immobilization surgery. And everyone couldn't understand why my stomach hurt. And I was just like, "This is ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, Whitney.
Get
Oh,
me out of here."
yes.
It was
Oh my,
insane. I would not wish
oh
that on anyone's worst enemy.
my, sounds, yeah. I can't even imagine. I literally can't even imagine how terrible. And you probably fell asleep too because your body was like in so much pain because you were
Yeah.
awake during the procedure.
Yeah, exactly. I talked to him afterwards. I was calling and calling for him, and he didn't come. He wasn't there on the weekend, and I had to go to see him a couple weeks later, and I told him what happened, and I was just like, "Why did this happen?" And he's like, "Well, everything's going to be fine now." And I was like, "Well, I want to write something. I want to publish something." I had gone to Also, at this time, he had asked me to go to a gynecologist on the campus of Charité, which is supposed to be the best hospital in Europe, one of the best in the world. And the gynecologist looked at me because I was telling him I need pain medicine, I need new birth control. I had the surgery from your colleague. And the gynecologist looked at me and he literally said, "Oh, you were an experiment. I don't believe in this surgery." And I was so mad, Melissa. I started yelling at him. I was so mad. I was like, "I'm not an experiment."
No,
Like,
I am a human being. Oh
I
my
swear to God,
goodness.
I will. Yeah, yeah. It was insane. I was so angry after that. I literally stormed across the campus to the doctor who gave me the adenomyosis surgery. And I was like, "I don't care if he's in surgery right now. I will wait in his office. Like, he will come and talk to me. He came to talk to me, and I was like, your colleague who you sent me to get assistance literally said this. And he's like, oh, yeah, well, my colleague, he can be very dramatic at times, and he's rather old fashioned, and we work together a lot. And I said, yes, but he actually told me I was an experiment, and he doesn't believe in your methods. So how can you send me to someone who said that? And it was just the most disgusting experience of my life. And at that point, I said, I will never have another surgery. I would maybe like to have a kid. I'm not sure yet, but I will never have another surgery because I just cannot after that experience. It was too much.
I have no words. I'm so mad for you right now. Like, how awful,
Yeah.
how terrible for him to say that. It's disgusting, is what it is. Like, literally disgusting.
Yeah, I posted on Instagram about it, and I also told the surgeon that I wanted to go public with this. And he said, well, I will support you as long as you say that the surgery worked. And it didn't work. It didn't work. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And so this was in 2021.
Exactly. November 2021. And I have not had a surgery since then. And I am, yeah, I'm really unsure of how to move forward in terms of, wanting to have a kid or not. I'm with my partner now, and we've been together for a few years. And as I say, I'll be 36 soon. And my new gynecologist said, you really don't have time if you want to have a kid. You need to try. But I also ask myself, is it worth bringing a human into this world that might have all these issues? Would they have adenomyosis and endometriosis and chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia and Hashimoto's? Like, could I actually do that? Would I want someone to suffer like this? It would seem so unfair. But at the same time, like so many other people with this disease, I think you want it anyway. So I'm just not sure about it. And even if it's a possibility, but I wouldn't want to get IVF or anything like that. So yeah, that's kind of at the phase where I am now, and just trying to also, I made it a pact this year. My word of the year is molasses. So very Southern, but just slow, soft, sweet living. Um, I have met so many wonderful people that I want to be very good friends with, but I just don't have the capacity. And I really want to spend this year focusing on my very best friends and the things that make me happy, and doing as little as possible to make sure I can finish the PhD. And also I'm working for, a foundation on the side. And I'm also transparent with my colleagues about what I am dealing with. And I think in this field, especially of international relations, where it's like dominated by men, and people need to know. So I am not quiet about it. If I come in with a heating pad and they're like, oh, you're on your period, and I'm like, no, I have severe endometriosis and adenomyosis, and I give them the speech, and they're like, what was that? But they need to know. So that's how I'm living this year.
I'm first off, I'm so sorry for all that you've gone through. It's unacceptable how that they treated you, but I love the molasses theory. Like, I want to incorporate that into my life.
Please do.
It's such a great way to say it, like slow and sweet. I love that, slowing down. And I think it's super important to talk about it. I didn't start outwardly talking about my endo stuff until 2018, even though I was diagnosed in 2004. I did not talk about it for a long time. I mean, people very, very close to me knew, but I didn't outwardly start talking about it. And very similar to you, I talk about it with my colleagues. It's still very hard. I had to cancel a couple trips this year because I was just too sick and in pain, and they were work trips. And there was some guilt from some of the men on my team that were like, oh, you can't travel. And I was like, well, let me educate you about this disease. And then you decide if you would have gotten on a plane when that was happening to you. So in the past, I would have pushed myself. I would have went, I would have laid on the floor of my hotel room. I've done that multiple times. I've gotten to the point where I just won't do it anymore. And I'm trying to slow down too. And it has served me so much better to do that. And I'm still achieving a lot of the things that I want to in my life. But I've also realized that, I don't know, slowing down and spending time with the people that I love and reading a book and just on a Saturday afternoon instead of doing all of the things has been very helpful for my body too, just calming everything down.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean that I don't
that's
have pain or I
amazing.
don't feel well, but it does help. I have noticed a difference with my effort of my boundaries and when I'm going to say no and what I'm going to say yes to. I
Yeah,
don't love it. I want
boundaries.
to do all the things, but I finally am starting to accept that I just can't.
Yeah. I think
So
that's really important. And the boundaries thing resonates so much. That's something else I think also um, that's been really hard. But another word that I've been focusing on this year is boundaries. And I think to also being able to have those boundaries at work and with your friends, and to not have to go into so many details about things when you don't want to. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's the same in the States and in Germany, where if you're a woman and you have kids and you can take off work because you're not feeling well or your kids are sick, that's okay. But if you need to take off because of endometriosis or adenomyosis, they don't get it. And in Germany, you can have as many sick days as you need, basically. And the health insurance will pay up to, like, I think like 3 months or something like that. And then after that, it's still, they pay, but it's less. And I always find myself having to explain so much why I'm deciding to take a sick day. Whereas I think someone with like a child, they could just say, oh, my kid is sick or I'm not feeling well. And I almost want to say, like, I need to take the sick day for myself to make myself feel good to maybe one day have a kid. And I think this is also something that society doesn't see. It's like, oh, you can have a child or not. And so much of what being a woman or womanhood means is surrounding like the nuclear family, man, wife, child. And that's also not what family looks like. And I've gotten so much support from my pole dance community here. I actually started pole dancing a few years ago. I was an avid dancer in undergrad, and I did belly dancing in Cairo and Istanbul. And even on the days where I feel horrible, I will crawl out of bed to go to my pole classes because the people there are just so body positive and inclusive. And I've gained so much body positivity from the sex workers and the strippers who are teaching these classes in Berlin. And, they've all become my friends in my community. And they are such great listeners, and we support each other. And my feminism has expanded as well from being in this circle. And I have really loved that and being in this space. So I don't know if any of your other guests have talked about taking pole dance classes, but everyone should because they're fantastic.
I haven't personally done it. There was one like on the corner of my street and then there was construction. They closed, but I was very interested. I think you're
Yes.
probably the first person on the podcast to mention it, but I have seen other people with endometriosis do it and say very
Yeah.
similar things, that it just
Oh, it's so
empowered
good.
them and made them feel great. So what a great tip for us to like take away is to try that. And I love that feeling. You probably feel empowered and you have a community that you can talk to that understands. And I
Yeah.
just
And
absolutely love that.
the core strength after
Yes.
doing endo, after doing pole and then having like an endo surgery or something. Normally it would take me a few weeks
Yes.
to get up and going. But now, like one of the last surgeries, it was like 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, who am I? Super
Like my
woman.
core is so strong.
And then overdoing it, and then you're doomed for days on end.
Well, that also can happen. Yes, yes, it can.
But
Oh
yeah,
my
it's been a nice
goodness.
journey.
That's that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And, before we wrap up our chat and our conversation, I know, you mentioned that advocating for health, women's health, and, you're working on your PhD and all of that. Anything that you want to share from your learnings there? Anything before we part that you want to share with everyone, the community who's listening?
Yeah, I think just doing something out of the norm has been really helpful for me, because I think with this disease, if we, there's so much that we cannot do. And sometimes the things that we've done really well for a long time, we just can't anymore, or it doesn't make us feel good anymore. So, along with the grieving process, I think it's just nice to try something new if you can. It doesn't matter if it's walking down a different street than you normally would, or buying a different tea than you normally would, or, meeting someone at a different place instead of the old favorite place. That's been good for me. And it just brings in some excitement, because I feel like sometimes that's what we miss if we're so sick and lying on the floor and trying and trying and trying. Sometimes just like trying to find excitement and adventure in these small things have brought me great joy. And I've bought way too many books over the last year or two, because I'm like, well, I can't get off the couch. So this adventure is going to happen via this way. And buying books written by women only, that's been my thing for the past 2 years. And I buy only fiction books when I'm not doing my PhD. So allowing myself to find adventure and be creative has been really powerful. So maybe that will help others too. And they can feel some joy and excitement in just the little things in life.
Beautiful suggestion. I absolutely love that. I'm a big book reader. I love it. I'm about to dig into a book called All in Her Head, and it's the systemic why women's health and why we're always accused of it's all in our head. So it's by Dr. Elizabeth Coleman. I have it right here. So anyone who's watching the video, plug for watching the video now on Spotify and YouTube. I don't know this person. I just saw someone talk about it, and I picked it up. It's the next thing that I'm diving into. I just finished Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, which was very good. It took me a long time to get through it though, because it's a lot. But those are not fiction. I need a fiction. I need a fun fiction, because I've been reading a lot of just academic type things, and I need a good break for some fiction. But I really appreciate that suggestion. Whitney, anything else that we didn't get to or you want to chat about before we wrap up? I so appreciate you being here and your vulnerability and your openness and honestness.
Yeah, thank you. I guess like maybe the final thing I would say, I talked about having this difficult relationship, opening up about womanhood and my culture, where I came from. And sometimes I feel that if your family can't understand, or people around you, then it's okay also to have chosen family. And this has been very powerful for me as well. And people who feel like sisters and who have been there and supported me through so much. If it weren't for a few of my best friends here in Berlin, Jana and Teresa and Sarah, for example, bringing me biscuits, those Tennessee style biscuits, or bringing me, some True Blood to watch, or picking me up from the hospital and just like letting me ugly cry on their shoulders. And, it's just meant so much. I even had one of my best friends, Kate, who flew over after a surgery, and she was here to take care of me. And I stay with her auntie in Edinburgh when I go there. So it's, she's not my family, but she feels like she is. I mean, it is family, my chosen family. And that has literally made a world of difference. I don't think I would have survived if it weren't for them. Yeah.
I understand. I totally understand. I think that is wonderful. And I agree. Chosen family can be very, very helpful. People who really understand.
1,000%. Oh, emotional.
Oh, that's okay. This happens on the show, and
Aw.
it's really, for people who are listening who maybe feel isolated, because this disease can be very isolating. Reach out
Yeah.
to people on Instagram or join Facebook groups. There's people there that are willing to help support you if you are feeling alone or isolated in this disease. I know I have felt that too, and I found a community to surround myself with, and when I'm having that bad day. It sounds like, Whitney, you have those people too. You can
Yeah.
reach out to them and they just understand, and maybe they'll just sit next to you or sit on a phone call with you.
Mm.
But there's so much hope and there is so much support. And if you don't have those people directly with you, they're out there. Find them on social media, find them through Reddit. There's communities that will support you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so well stated. Absolutely.
Thank you, Whitney. All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. I hope you have a lovely rest of your weekend. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting the show. It's so important to have these conversations because it just helps us reach more people and get awareness out there about how challenging this disease is. Please rate us if you like the show. If you didn't, you can rate us too, but hopefully you'll give a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate you.